So I knew I was going to be there for the rest of my pregnancy, and I was only, I think, like 29 weeks along at this point after all this had gone on. So um, for me, the thought of having to be there until 40 weeks was just like, it was so overwhelming. So I ended up being there in total. I was there for a month and a half before I gave birth to her. And it was difficult because I was in Boston, so I was so far away. And I think one of the things I wasn't prepared, like I knew that I was in denial. So the whole time, like I knew that I was probably going to be there for the rest of my pregnancy, but I was in denial and I did not want to accept that. So I remember like each day the doctors would make their rounds, and I would ask them like the same question, like literally like a crazy person looking for a different answer, and because all I wanted to do was go home. So one of the things that would make me really, I guess, depressed when I was there was when I thought about all the things that I didn't get to do. Like I didn't get to finish decorating her nursery. Like I didn't get to like, and I remember that like the one thing that made me like completely break down, I couldn't think about it, but I had to because I had to discuss it, was my baby shower, because it had already been booked and planned, and I had ordered my dress. And I remember my cousin, who was helping to plan it, she came up and she, she's like, okay, I think we need to like talk about this now. Like, what do you want to do about your shower? And I remember I just shut down. Like I couldn't talk about it. I couldn't, I don't know, I just couldn't face that, because you have this thought in your head about what your pregnancy is going to be, and you have all these, these great things that you look forward to, and then all of a sudden it's taken away from you. So that was probably the hardest part for me, being there. Makeup and talk about. But so when I was there, my husband, he would literally, and like I think he's just the greatest, but he would come up every single night after work. There was not one night, there was one night, and I'll tell you about that night. But there was not one night where he didn't come up. And then, so my family was great. They would come up and visit me as much as they could. So they would, and like everyone sent flowers, and it was really touching, like how many people, you really notice how many people care. And like I remember my manager, the one that at the dental office, her and her husband came up and spent the day, and it was really touching to have that many people care. And like you just don't, I guess you don't notice it until like this kind of thing happens. But I also, like, I would always feel bad because literally there was like not that much to do. So I would like always feel bad when people came up, and I'm like, this is my room, like this is where I am all day. And I would always tell them, like, if you like literally do not feel bad leaving after an hour, because I understand, like, you have a life, like you have stuff to do, and I'm just here. So like, don't feel bad. But yeah, so I feel like I'm gonna have to make this video into like a 3 or 4 part video because it's so long, because everyone's so curious as to like what I did all day. And like I don't even know, like I started crocheting. That was one thing. And I didn't really, I don't know, I really wasn't into like watching my normal shows, because it just made me think of like my normal, I don't know, I didn't enjoy watching them there. But I remember like me and my husband, we'd always watch Family Feud, like, and we'd get like really, and I would get really into it. So that was kind of like one of the things I looked forward to, like when he would come up at night, was watching Family Feud with him. And like the nurses that would come in, a couple of them would like play along too. It was kind of fun. But that was kind of like the highlight of my night, as sad as that is. But I don't really know, like I just kind of, the one thing I would do every single day when I was there, I would do the same thing. I would take a shower. I would spend a really long time doing my makeup. Like that kept me really busy. And I would do my hair and so that was one thing that really kept me busy. And I would like, I don't know, I just thought that was, and I kind of felt like a little bit normal when I would do that. So that's one thing that I would do. And it just kind of kept me like feeling kind of like myself still, even though I wasn't at home or anything. But um, that's one thing that I did. I'm trying to think of some other things, but yeah, people are very curious about what I did all day. And um, I don't know, but some days would be really long, and some days would kind of go by fast. I remember I would try to sleep in as late as I could to make the day go by faster. And I don't know, yeah, I would just sleep in really late and just try to prolong like getting up and out of bed, even as like lazy and depressing as that sounds, but it would make the day go by faster because instead of getting up at like 7 o'clock, um, I would try to get up at like 10 o'clock. And then by that time, after I shower and, you know, do my makeup and everything, it's like the afternoon and like most of my day is gone. So that's one thing that kind of made it, even though that sounds kind of lazy and depressing, but I would do that. Another thing that was great is that a lot of the girls there, um, they were there for a really long time as well. So we really bonded, and it was really nice to have so many other people there that were kind of, they didn't all have the same thing that I had, but they were there. There were some there. I remember like I was one of the ones that had been there for a pretty long time. And there were like two or three other girls that had also been there for, I think we got there the same amount of time. And so I really bonded with them, and we'd have, they had like art class, um, and then there was also a support group that we'd go to there. And that was really nice. And that was one of the things, like at first I didn't go to it. And then after like, I don't know, a couple weeks, my husband, he kind of talked me into going to it. And that's really where you bond. And like afterwards, like all the girls, we'd sit around because we're there all the time. And it's so crazy that like a lot of us would just stay in our room and kind of just be, in the beginning, like just not really, I guess because you're kind of just depressed being in a hospital for that long. But I don't know, like for a really long time when I first got there, I didn't even want to leave my room. Like I just didn't want to do anything. But yeah, but it's very hard. Sorry, I'm trying to do this is probably was not a good idea to do this video and do my makeup at the same time because I'm really not getting anywhere. But so another thing that in the support group, I remember the lady who was in charge of it. She was a social worker, and I remember one day this really just kind of helped me and kind of come to terms with my pregnancy and that it wasn't what I thought it was going to be. And she explained it that it's something that you basically have to, it's like losing someone you love. And I know it kind of like sounds silly, but it's this thing that you have to accept and you have to grieve it, because it really is, it's something that, I don't know, I thought you think you're gonna have this great pregnancy and you don't. And so it's just like you have to go through a grieving process with it. And that is so true. And when she said that, I remember, because I was explaining to everyone how I was just sad about how this isn't how I thought how my pregnancy was going to be. And she explained it like that. And that was really helpful because I was in denial and I didn't want to accept. I remember like I wouldn't talk about things, like I wouldn't talk about rescheduling my baby shower. I just couldn't, like in my head for a pretty long time while I was there, these things were still going to happen and I wasn't not going to let them happen. And so I was in denial that I was going to be here for the rest of my pregnancy. And when she explained it like that, that was really helpful. So anyone who's had a difficult pregnancy, and if it has just not gone the way you thought it was going to be, if you just kind of, you have to accept it. And I know that's hard, but if you think of it as something that you you're gonna have to grieve it, and you're gonna have to just go through the grieving process of it. But what I'll talk about next is when so I had Everly early, because what they had told me that was going to happen, they said if at like if I had another big bleed at this point I was like 34 weeks pregnant. So the plan was they were going to induce me at 38 weeks no matter what. But if I had another significant bleed before then they were going to induce me then. What happened one night, I think it was right after Easter, and I told my husband, this was the only night I told him not to come up. I said, because he seemed tired and I seemed like pretty much okay being by myself that night. So I told him, I said, you know, if you're tired, and he got out of work late too. So I told him, I just said, don't, like, just stay home. It's fine. Like, I'll be okay for one night here by myself. I can handle it. Of course, that night it was like 2 o'clock in the morning, I wake up, and again, I thought I was peeing the bed, and this time I had the most significant bleed that I'd had the whole time. So I remember I woke up and there was just, like, when I say it was a lot of blood, like I don't know how much it was, but it was scary. And even though I was at the hospital and I knew I was in the safest place to be, I was very scared. And it was just blood everywhere, like everywhere. As soon as that happened, I knew I was going to be induced. Because they had told me if I have another significant bleed, that they're going to induce me. So of course it was the one night where I told my husband not to come up. And so again, they get me a stretcher, they're bringing me up to labor and delivery. And I call my husband and I let him know. So he comes up, and the first thing I told him, because I told him before he came up to the labor and delivery, I said, you need to go downstairs to my room and get all of my makeup and bring it up. So he does that, and he comes up, and they had induced me, and I felt fine. I mean, they had only induced me 10 minutes ago. So I started doing my makeup, do like full glam, because I'm like, there's no way I'm going to give birth and not have my makeup done at least. When they induced me, I kept bleeding, and it kept getting worse and worse. And so with my birth plan, I really, just because of everything that had happened, my plan was to basically just do whatever I needed to do to get her out healthy and safe. So the plan I had was to try naturally, and if not, then do a C-section. Like, I really did not care at this point, and I, like, the whole time during the pregnancy, sorry, I can't find my mascara, I really didn't, I had my heart set on no specific kind of way of giving birth. Like, I did not care. They could use a vacuum, they could do whatever they need to do to get her out safe. So that was not a concern of mine. So they induced me. We're gonna try naturally, and at this point I was 35 weeks pregnant. I was almost 36 weeks, I think. Yeah. So that happens, and then I just keep bleeding more and more. It's getting worse. And then at one point I remember her heart rate, her heart rate went down, and then my blood pressure went really low, and I remember getting very dizzy, and I just felt, it's like when they gave me that magnesium sulfate, I just felt like that. And I told them, and so they put an oxygen mask on me. And I think this is just like funny thinking back on it, but they told me to turn over and get on all fours. So I'm like, do I really have to do that? Like, I really don't want to be like that right now.